Let's start here. The government has to be advised by the professionals
Mm-hmm.
or the experts.
Mm.
Government should not advise themselves.
Mm.
That's the bottom line. Let
Yeah.
government be advised by the experts.
Mm.
Welcome to Unhinged Podcast, a design discourse where we take the hinges off conventional thinking about design, space, and the forces that shape our built environment. Today's guest is a powerhouse in both practice and policy, Mr. Caesar Tupelo, an architect and the chairman of the business Botswana built environment and construction sector. With years of experience navigating the intersection of design, development, and governance, Mr. Tupelo brings a unique perspective on how architecture operates not just as a creative discipline, but as a tool for economic empowerment, national development, and structural transformation. Let's get into it.
How are you, sir?
I'm fine, and you?
I'm good. How was your morning?
That's great. Great weather. A bit cloudy, but that's fine.
I was surprised when you told me that you function well in the morning. Normally, creative people, designers, architects are like night crawlers and alls. They function better at night. So I was quite surprised when you told me, Hore, you are a morning person.
Normally it goes with age. It goes with a bit of responsibilities. Some people prefer quieter time, of which I do. Which means I come to the office as early as 6 o'clock in the morning and I leave at 7 p.m.
Okay.
So that's when the hustle and bustle is not that much.
Mm.
So that in the mid mornings,
Mm.
probably I can do my science
Mm.
or I can do other things.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Would you like to introduce yourself to our audience? Who you are? Who is Mr. Caesar Tupelo?
Caesar Tupelo is an architect. I trained in the United Kingdom at Leeds Beckett University. That's my life school where I graduated. But I did my first degree at Birmingham City University.
Okay.
I've got almost 20 years in the industry post graduation.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm from Masunga, a village in the northeast.
Yes.
Originally, my father's from home,
All
so
right.
I'm a Matawana.
Okay.
Yes. Married to a lovely woman called Hunti.
All
With
right.
one daughter.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm just my founder and managing director of Design 360 Architects, one of the fastest growing architectural firms in Botswana in general. And we pride ourselves as one of the architectural firms that gears their designs or their design philosophies around sustainability and green architecture and issues around renewables and smart architectural type of hybrids. So this is where we're at.
Beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
Beside architecture, do you have any other passions, talents?
Um, I'm a very, very strong football fan.
Okay.
Not only FC in Botswana,
Mm.
Orlando Pirates in South Africa, Chelsea in the UK,
Okay.
and Barcelona FC in Spain.
All right.
Those ones that I follow with passion.
All right.
And so, other than that, I enjoy socializing with friends. Because at my age, at 50 now, we have to talk about how what the future really holds for maybe our children, the country at large, how we can contribute, in meaningful ways, our farms, whatever that we really do have. When you live in your second half of your life, and not being young, we are at the pinnacle now.
Yeah.
Of our careers and life. So, but other than that, I'm a board member of the Business Botswana representing the construction sector as the chairman of the built environment and construction sector. I was a board member at CESA. I enjoy contributing back to the community as much as possible.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you tell us about your journey into architecture? I also read that you are a project manager. Yes.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about your journey into architecture? and project management and how it started and what inspired you to get into the course itself? Because I doubt when in that time when you were growing up, it was a thing. I doubt that was a thing. And like engineering, being a doctor, and all that.
Uh, Not even. I mean, look, when I graduated in GSS, some 32 or years ago,
Mm.
there was no career guidance per se in those days.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there could be people that could inspire you,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes your socioeconomic background sometimes does not even get you to people who can really inspire you. I mean,
Yes,
that was the
yes.
time at the time, and the country was not really well developed at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of um, architects, engineers were still British at the time,
Yeah.
and mostly sometimes South African. So we
Mm-hmm.
didn't really know what architecture, engineering, dentistry was. I mean, people really used what their good grades. You go to UB, you do your pre-entry science, and
Mm-hmm.
then there will be courses. I mean, you've never met a dentist. Maybe
Yeah.
you've never done your teeth. You've never seen a design studio. I mean, you wouldn't even know exactly what was what. So
Mm.
I went to study civil and building engineering at University of Botswana, Faculty of Engineering and Technology, which is FET.
Mm.
I didn't know
Yeah.
what it was. I just liked my sciences, and your false teachers was like, no, just go with your sciences. They were good, and good in maths and science and whatever. And so we just followed with the grain.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't make it to the guys who would have left after the pre-entry science to the UK at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and Canada and Australia
Yeah.
at the time. So there was a bridging gap, which is you can do engineering, which is local.
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of lecturers as well were also internationals,
Mm.
Indians, UK, and people from Zambia, from Africa, whatever the case they were coming from.
Yeah.
Then I got to have the gist of what construction was all about.
Mm-hmm.
And there was an inspiration that there was a man in the village called Mr. Victor Majauli. He had a bricklaying, manufacturing plant.
Yeah.
So in the 80s, we used to go there and we got intrigued by a machine making bricks, because back in the days, we used to see how bricks were made by this. We have a form, you stamping it.
Yeah.
So and then when you connect those dots, it's thinking, okay, for maybe this is where I would be.
Mm-hmm.
Graduated in 1996, and then I didn't know, there was a lot of places to go to look for a job. I could easily say, okay, fine, I had a diploma and a bit of a stigma. Can I go back to UB, change course?
Yeah.
Because but I had in 1995, before I graduated, I had gone for an internship at the then Department of Building and Architectural Services, which was called DABS at the time.
Yeah.
And I would go and volunteer there and see how it's done. It was out of my own volition,
Yeah.
Guys would have, it would be, the break, summer break or whatever you call it, vacation.
Vacation, yeah.
And guys would go to the home villages. I'll go there and go and see how things were done, and I'll get to meet the architects. I didn't know what an architect is and ask questions. And
Yeah.
so when I graduated, and I went back to them and say, well, I'm done now. Can I continue? And then I still continued as a trainee. But at the time, I didn't have a department where I was. So they put me in the library. And then they had just moved to the new offices next to the station, because Kopano House. So when I went there, and they had because they had moving a lot of stacks of books and whatever. So I was sent in there to go and arrange that, because they didn't have a space for me.
Yeah.
And then I would spend time, going through all this engineering, architectural books and whatever. So then one day, this gentleman called Mr. George Lakai is passed on. He's from Ghana. He shall rest in peace. We had a chat.
Yeah.
I was I'm a very assertive person. I was very assertive back then when I was young. So he say, what really interests you? I was like, I picked up one of the books from architectural books. I say, you know what? I would want to see myself designing something like this.
Yeah.
He say, where have you been attached? I say, no, and they just threw me in the library. Say, no, come to my department. So I went to his department. Then I took it from there. Then I started meeting some of his staff members. Some of them were Botswana, some of them are already in the UK. They've come for vacation, and just starting to have this confidence of saying, okay, so Botswana can go and study this type of thing. So that is where I would like to be. So yeah. And in 1997, a gentleman called Steve Gaffney was looking for a technician.
Yeah.
And I think in one of these sessions where back in the days, there used to be companies that would be launching products, Kona Rockla, whether it's paint or whatever it is. So go in there. And then I think Mr. Lakai said, there's a guy who's working in my office, but they haven't committed him yet. Maybe he would be better at you guys because they're taking too much with him. He's look more assertive and stuff. So I left 1996 and then I joined Mr. Steve Gaffney, his company called Sigma Design. Yes. So, and then 1998, there was an opportunity that opened there was a scholarship that was done between Business Botswana at the time, which was BOKIM, and the British Council. Okay. So, if you had Business Botswana, let me say BOKIM member at the time, you would have to nominate someone in your office who, if you're a member, who could be eligible for sponsorship. Then Mr. Gaffney said, you know what, I don't want to keep you too long. You're still very smart young man, and it would be unfair for me to keep you here. So let me just put up your name for scholarship. I did the interview. I remember Mrs. Oribosema Syria was, I think, was HR director there and BOKIM. Got me to interview. I went to British Council. Apparently, we got that slot. Then I had to go to British Council, and now knowing that I might be going to the UK, so I didn't know what the UK looked like. But of course, we know the British. Then I would go there and look at the videos of what Liverpool was, Manchester, all the cities, London, and whatever. So yeah, I applied, and then I got a scholarship. And then I got a placement at the University of Central England at the time it was called, which is now Birmingham City University, to go and study architecture in 1998. And I left in 1998 in September. So I could take a lot of time talking about that, but that's how the journey was. That was the journey was. You see, I had to find my pathways. Where there was actually no career guidance at the time. There was no mentor in the village. There was nothing was done engineering.
Every man for himself.
Then there are a lot of my friends who had very good grades in high school and GSS. They also were doing something in the UB. So which means we wanted to be like them. But when you look at back now, at where we're at now. All my peers are very successful in their own rights. Very successful. I mean, education was something that really had to take us out of the bondage of saying, I need to better my life. There was nothing else. There was nothing else that you could bank on. Parents were not really even privileged. We didn't come from privileged backgrounds. And it was something, but the only thing that really got us together in terms of one spirit was education.
Which practically it still is.
I come from a family whereby my father was not educated, my mother was not even educated, but they really respected school. If you can't go to school, you will know how you get lashed of not going to school in the 80s. What would you be doing at home when the whole village has gone to school?
True.
I mean, so that was the discipline that came up with really respecting education, because for them, you have to be some like somebody else who has gone through a school, who has gone from 5 and to university, who is a teacher, who is whatever. So it was one of those things. They didn't like those shortcuts to when you say, no, I've done JC, I want to be a policeman. Some parents were very strict, but remember when we graduated, and you could see the joy in our parents at the time, like really triumphant of joy and saying, these kids have made it. So this is the long and short of exactly my pathways to
So having studied abroad, right? As an architect and also in architecture, and then coming back home, what do you think are the disparities or the differences within the education system for architecture specifically?
The United Kingdom is a very developed country. It is within a very developed region, which is Western Europe.
Yeah.
Remember, the UK was also the colonizer and the seat for the Commonwealth. So they have colonized so many countries, and one of the impactful things that they did was the promotion of education. And they had a very high standard of education that they promoted, that they was in competition with the region and even North America, which is the US and Canada and the rest of the world. So the capability or the capacity of our education system at the time could not match theirs. I mean, they had the resources. Education is also has to do with resources.
Yeah.
It has to do with resources, and I'm talking about infrastructure, and I'm talking about the human resource, which is your lecturers and your whatever researchers and everything. So we had to go and gain as much as possible, the best way possible, because we are doing it to bring it home. That was the message.
Yeah.
Go and get as much education as possible and bring it home so that we can come and transform our own economies. That has always been the policy in most countries, especially Commonwealth countries, when they send their students to universities in the UK primarily, was to go and get as much as possible and then come and impact it back into the economy. But we did, and I went in 1998 when the time when President Festus Mogae has taken a decision to really upgrade the human resource capital development. And we left some people went to the US, Canada, Australia, and the UK in large numbers at the time. Because I mean, the economy was growing faster, very, very faster, but it was done by foreign nationals, and there was very little local capacity of Botswana who were really trying to do these things. He said, no, you know what, I'm going to have to do in all sectors so that Botswana can really come and assist that. And it was a good thing. That was before the birth of the HRTC at the time. So it was a decision that was made in cabinet and the Ministry of Education to really do that, and we really enjoyed that. But the disparities still exist today. Sometimes it goes with the level of how you'd want to see the vision of your country in terms of developing human capital, which I don't think we really invested too much into it. Yes, of course, you would have in the 90s when private universities come into the fore, but there has never been a really strategic human capital development program that would say, we don't have a lot of bioengineering scientists, can we help them here? We don't have a lot of mineral scientists, geologists, or whatever you want to name them. Can we create more, train more, so that at the time in the mining sector, Orapa Jwaneng and Letlhakane, most of the professionals, engineers, geologists, surveyors, were all South Africans predominantly. And then I know Botswana did a lot to train for their own staffing, but it probably was not enough. But the dominance was still prevailing, and it still does today, but not as much as it was in the 80s and the 90s. So had we had a clear path of saying or strategy for human resource development or human capital, whatever you want to call it, then we would have known sectorially where we are lacking. And when you are not in power, the subscriptions of ideologies sometimes can get lost in translations. But I would have thought we would have done better. Yes.
So where would you now rate the architectural, construction, engineering industry in our country from scale of 1 to 10? Where would you rate it?
Botswana is still developing, and it has done well in infrastructural development. In Africa, we're probably the top 5.
Top 5?
Yeah. Top 5, South Africa being the first, probably Egypt being the second, Morocco maybe being the third. And I'm talking about strategic infrastructure development things that you could say we are proud of that. Maybe we had done well, but not enough.
Not enough.
No,
Sure.
not enough.
Yeah.
One thing is that we have never really sold architecture and urbanism as something that could give pride. We haven't. Do you know why we love going to Dubai, for example? It's the architecture and the urbanism.
Yes.
And the way they've morphed their urban design systems that really works. Of course, this is just a small island, not an island, but it's part of the UAE. But you go there and you get amazed.
Yes.
But in a government-led economy, as opposed to a private sector-led economy, the government will always dictate. Unfortunately, sometimes with architecture that they want. And the savings that they would probably do. That's why you see all junior secondary schools in Botswana look the same because they were using the same drawings.
Yeah.
For them, it was cost saving. I don't understand why they were doing cost saving because at the time the economy was booming in the late 80s and 90s. But we didn't have a system where innovation really meant something to the government. Maybe they didn't know. No. Okay, why should primary school in Good Hope be different from the one in Shakawe?
Yeah.
What's that? I mean,
Same
just
goes
take
for
the same
the
drawing, same the
houses,
buildings. Yeah, the same as that.
Mm.
It goes to say that we didn't innovate. We even today we're still probably 20, 30 years behind the rest of the world sometimes. Yes, of course, I mean, I'll tell you something. The CBD plot, that one that you're seeing there, was allocated in 1992. It started catching a bit of glimpse of development probably in the last 15 years.
Yeah.
It's been fallow for so many years. So you see, because though it was allocated to private developers, we could say we are proud of what has come out of the CBD, but albeit late. Then that's the only thing that we have in Botswana after so many years. And I'm not going to talk about the retail, your malls and stuff. Okay, yeah, you talk about Sarona City hasn't come in a few years ago, but that was it. But when you look at other regions, there's nothing else where the private sector development has been there. So we're still dependent now on government, on the direction of how government wants to develop the country, and then we fall back. But it's still going to be difficult in a private, in a public sector led economy, government led economy. I wish we could now borrow into saying, let's innovate. Let's look at the new trends in sustainability issues. Let's look at the new trends in construction methods. Let's look at new trends in renewable energy or energy management systems that are being used. Let those who can innovate. You need to encourage that. Yeah. And the link could also come from the fact that we don't do a lot of research and development in a lot of spheres of the economy. So we don't. Had we, there's nothing late in anything.
We are deep into the conversation. We are like too far, and I haven't even asked the basic questions that I wanted to ask. But since we are here, let me ask this. You are saying that because we are government led, right?
Yeah.
That we are slow in the growth of our architectural, engineering, and construction industry. But now my question is, we have these people who are architects and who are engineers, who are urban planners, working for the government, right? So what is their role in that? Are they not in that position to, influence the decisions that are being made for an opportunity to build something innovative, create something sustainable and all that?
They could, but they've got limitations. Everything else stems from the National Development Plan or National Development Program. Of saying National Development Plans in Botswana take 7 years.
Yeah.
So sometimes you could look ahead. And unfortunately, most of our national development plans have always been delayed. Some of the projects that you see being done today should have been done 15 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So there is a prioritization of how the government systems works, but that's up to them. Because you can get into a government machinery or government department in your early 20s, and you could see that what you would have loved things to have been done would probably be done when you're in close to your 50s, because of the slow uptake of project implementation and planning systems, how they are done and what have you. So that's why I'm saying there's limitations. The national development plans also subscribe to a political direction. You can't separate the two. You can't separate the two. So if they are supposed to be a hospital in Lerala to service the Zopong area, Zopong North area, and then there is something that also government feels is a priority in Molepulule, for example, that one will be shelved, and then but that's a health facility. That's a social amenity that is needed. It's a health investment that is needed. But if they decide to put it on hold, well, the community will suffer, but there is nothing else they can do about it. But perhaps would have been part within the National Development Plan. It would have been planned for. But when it's going to return back into the basket of the planning systems, perhaps might not be there. It might skip a National Development Plan. So the architects, engineers, urban planners, or physical planners, whatever they are, they can only do so much. But their role has never been really defined within the government systems.
Interesting.
There's never been. You could write and say create some sort of key performance indications of saying, okay, you have to be innovative. You're going to supervise projects and need to make sure that projects satisfy certain standards, building standards or engineering standards, whatever the case. But sometimes it doesn't happen that way. Sometimes it doesn't happen that way. But when you don't get activated as a professional, you can rust.
For sure.
You can have a blockage in the way you are going to innovate. If your innovation is not being received, you get frustrated. Say you're working for a government department, you have to build a new school, but you have been somewhere, maybe in your own personal tourism activity, and you've seen a lovely school in Denmark, for example, that uses solar and that recycles water and all sorts of things. And you say, hang on a minute, why don't we redesign this to resemble what I have seen? Your idea will be crushed. And you'll be crushed as well. And they will say, no, we've always been building schools this way. So why do we need to change? I'm taking this as an example and saying, why do we still build classroom blocks separate from each other? You get my point?
Yes.
But you go in South Africa and say private schools, they are all conjoined. The whole things that there's always a centrality point of saying, okay, maybe the multi-purpose hall will be here, and then something else is there. That's innovation. And then you put all these issues of sustainability and whatever. It's never been really received, issues of sustainability and renewables and whatever. Sometimes people say maybe you need a policy. Sometimes, what does the policy has to do? Some designers are working with these things. There should be policy, there should be standards, yes, of course. But why can't your idea be received?
So it's maybe a case of mindset change.
No. You see, these things of mindset change, it gets a bit more misconstrued when it's not supposed to be done. It's a developmental, strategy of saying, I'm going to stick to this. Let's innovate. Let's do things different. You can call it mind change, but it's not something that the others who have innovated were working around the mindset. It was because the world has adopted a system of development and design and architecture and urbanism and whatever, that people go to conferences international and say, well, we have seen what the Germans are doing. Can we borrow what the Germans are doing? But the problem is we don't really bring in what people who are doing something different are doing.
Okay.
Because like I'm saying, your ideas will be crushed because your seniors would have never really traveled, never really heard of this particular school or this particular hospital that does this and that and that, all sorts of things.
Should we now assume that the problem is with the decision makers, the people who are at the top, who are supposed to be, making sure that when someone comes with an innovative idea, the idea goes through?
Let's start here. The government has to be advised by the professionals or the experts. Government should not advise themselves. That's the bottom line. Let government be advised by the experts. Let's take this gentleman. He's into photography, videography, and everything.
Yeah.
And someone who has to make a decision about policy on videography is sitting on the desk.
Yeah.
Which is called desktop decision making. He's never been on the field, doesn't know how these things are done, and he crushes his idea. What is the basis of his or her argumentation for crushing that? It's not informed.
Yeah, nothing.
Something must inform you. Industries must also be empowered to say, this is what we're saying, and this is where we should go.
Yeah.
And I hope that, with the hope that we get from the new vibe from the new administration, is that they seem to be saying, let's us innovate. I heard Vice President Ndamagalati at the Renewable Energy Dialogue saying they would now want to look at research and development on a higher level. They would want to see young people innovate.
Yeah.
Because innovation is something that is holding us back. We have been doing something dormancy approach for many years.
Yes.
We have never really had something that really looks different.
No.
We haven't. Imagine if now we're saying we have an investor who's going to be doing a renewable energy plant in Strassendam, Kawa, because it's a desert, sand dunes. It's been done elsewhere in the world. You're going to have a lot of skills there, chemists and physicists and whatever, nuclear, what. And we're saying, well, now we have over 500 megawatts of energy coming from the sun. There's no need for us to be now working on doing the grids in those areas. Every village now would have to have a grid coming from the sun. So it's been done so many years. In Germany, for example, when I was a student in 1997, 98, they have been pioneering solar for so many years. Sweden has been pioneering biogas for energy 25 years ago, 29 years ago. But these are very cold countries. They don't have the
sun that we have.
That we do.
Yeah.
But in Botswana, we say, okay, now let's start with the policy. Let's develop a policy, review it, and whatever. 6 years down the line, we're still working on the policy. You know how much is 6 years in other developing countries? It's just another innovation after another innovation after another innovation. Let the voices of the professionals and experts be heard.
Yeah.
Let's filter. Government's only role is to make sure that we manifest policies. That's it. They don't have to block anything. That's my vision. That's my view. So you come in as Lorato and saying, hang on a minute, why don't we do this? We need to accommodate your idea and saying, well, it's for the betterment of for the industry, for the country, for the development, for the urbanism, whatever. And you're looking at Gaborone is the only major economic center anyway in the country. But there's gridlocks in the morning, people driving into town, coming from villages in the neighboring, coming to work in Gaborone. And our roads get gridlocked early mornings, early evenings. But there are ideas of doing this thing better. Right? These are ideas that are embedded in designers, in young people. And they've seen the world, they're looking at these videos of urbanism or sustainability, they're into webinars every week in, week out. But the decision makers are not into that space. They don't really attend webinars, they don't attend conferences, virtual or otherwise. Even if they do, they don't bring solutions. So we always going to be stuck into one place.
So people need to be given a chance.
There's not a chance. It's a system of way of life. For some people, that's their life. They are innovators.
No,
They innovate.
you know what I mean. In terms of the system that we have in Botswana, we need to somehow disrupt the system altogether for it to function the way we want it to function now.
I'll give you an example. There's a heavy rainfall.
Mm,
Everything is blocked.
mm,
Gaborone is flooding.
yeah.
You come to an engineering association or engineers and put them together and say, guys, we're having a problem with sewer, with drainage, stormwater drainage.
Mm.
What can we do best?
Mm.
And this is the private sector you're going to talk to.
Yes.
They will tell you ideas of having to do it. It's not a matter of always unblocking this debris that is within whatever. There are other ways of doing these things. And somebody say, why don't we bank the water? Build a reservoir. Let's get this old storm water, because it doesn't go to the dam anyway. It's just getting spoiled. So why don't you build channels of reservoirs underground?
Yeah.
And then the people who are using water for irrigation and say, okay, look, just go and buy water from that reservoir. It's got almost 30 million liters.
Yeah.
Until it gets depleted, until we get to the next rainy season or whatever it happens.
So we'll be having issues of.
And then that will be done by Gaborone City Council for their own money. We're selling this thing for about $600 for 1,000, 5,000 liters. But we are sorting it. So for the water to be coming from, let's say, GUC, Gaborone Technical College, GTC, all the way to where it was Game City Circle, maybe the water shouldn't even reach there. These are solutions. If you don't solutionize, you always have to dealing with one problem, another. You've got a wound, you keep on bandaging it, but you're not taking care of it. So your healing process is going to be slowed. Eventually you will heal, but your healing process is going to be slowed.
So that's the issue now.
Yeah.
Okay, taking you a little bit back now. I want to know, what are some of your most pivotal moments in your career as an architect, as a project manager, as a chairperson in the Business Botswana Belt Environment and Construction Center?
I started my practice in 2010. Unfortunately, that was the time of the economic meltdown, economic crash. And then we had to come back to the issues of also shelving projects. The recovery was not that easy as well for the government to start doing major infrastructure development projects. And when we had what we did, but the development of new government stock or the private sector was the one that has been growing a bit more, because government will always build schools. Well, fair enough. That's like a human right. You need to accommodate people to have centers of learning. But other than that, one of the things, our successes or our concentration of being able to enjoy, my career for me was when I started doing projects for FNB. Refurbishment projects for me are the best because you could easily work with how you can retrofit buildings. If you're going to work with a project and not having able to do a retrofitting project, you're still going to be doing something within the realm of normalcy. And then also I had an opportunity to be appointed to design a museum in Orapa for the
diamonds.
For the Botswana, yes, for the diamonds. It's an extension of already that what is existing phase 2, and then the general manager's office. So when you work on the general manager's office of a large company like DBS, the Botswana, for example, you have to give it your all. You have to give it your all. You need to have the best team, and then believe you me, there are a lot of Botswana who are very talented and innovative and creative.
Yeah.
Don't ever think that you're going to go out there and feel that anybody's better than us. You know why we really don't thrive much is we don't get a lot of opportunities for us to thrive.
Yes.
Give us an opportunity, we'll show you exactly who we are. And I'm gonna tell you that because when you look at Botswana, who are in the diaspora, they're not in the diaspora for being just there. Some are in very key strategic, career-driven positions, international, in the US, in whatever they are. This is who we are. It actually proves that at some point our education system was one of the best. It was. UB was better than almost universities in Africa. It has gone down a little bit because of other issues. But hella, this University of Botswana in Village was one of the best. So Business Botswana, I had a desire to say, you know what, I've seen Business Botswana, construction sector, I'm not feeling them in my space. Can I get closer, even to go and volunteer or even become a member of a committee that I can let my voice be heard? And I did. And then in 2019, there was elections. And there were people who have already been there. And I raised my hand and say, I'm standing up for the chairmanship of the sector. So we were given an opportunity to say our manifesto, objectives basically.
Your goals and aims.
And our elections were with the incumbent was a tie. I think it was 8-8 or so. And then we had to go in and go for the revote, and then we had to say what we have to say after the tie. And people were like, oh, okay, now we hear this gentleman. And then I triumphed against that gentleman. I was not happy about it, but I went in. Unfortunately, then COVID came. But when COVID came, I was part of the task team. I think it was the infrastructure. Task team. I forgot what it was called at the time. In 2020, where we had to look at saying, because of this shutdown, it gives us an opportunity to say, when we reopen the economy, what can we do better? Look, we have given the government so many ideas, and I think it's still happening 4 years down the line. It's see the uptake of implementations of what we have suggested. And one of the suggestions that we made was that we needed to have a stimulus, especially for the ones that are hit hard. Young contractors, young people who find themselves out of the work job, and we really need to have smaller projects, not like your maintenance things, to get them on the ground. And I still believe that even now, if given the opportunity to advise government of saying, how can we reduce unemployment and grow the private sector for young people? The ideas are there. I'm gonna just still to repeat to say, Lorato is just an out-of-school graduate. She's registering a company that specifically does with painting. Why would she have to compete with people who have been in business for things? Why don't we let your companies, young people's companies who are getting into the industry, into the entrepreneurial space of construction, to start with what is called low-risk projects? You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, technical low risk, you come and remove the ceiling, put new ceiling, you make your money, you're out, and then you dye your painting in maybe the whole block here, you make your own money, you're out, you go to the next one. Because when you look at the maintenance or facilities appetite in Botswana, it's very huge, because government building stocks has dilapidated beyond, some of them beyond. We probably would need a budget of around 6 billion to really rework all of these other things, including a little bit of extensions, and also retrofitting. And now when we retrofit, we need to retrofit in line of saying, can we also infuse sustainability issues, green issues, renewable issues, reuse materials and recycled materials, whatever the case, because we need to really say we are really subscribing to issues of climate change and reduction of carbon emissions and whatever. So I was at the climate change conference last year. We are always agreeing with these things in Dubai, but when you come home, it's business as usual. It shouldn't be now. If we are given center stage as Business Botswana, as the industry professional, built environment and the contractors, they also need to know what the direction of construction from the designer's perspective for them, which are the implementers of something in the physicality form, which are the contractors.
Yeah.
There is going to be a real learning and capacity building initiative that needs to be done so that our contractors know that things have changed.
Yeah.
You know, they should be that direction.
Touched on sustainability, promoting sustainability within the construction industry. So my question is, what do you think is the role of architects, designers, contractors, and project managers towards addressing climate change and promoting sustainability?
One answer: we need an environmental policy amongst all sectors of the economy. Manufacturing, construction, agriculture, ICT, energy management, everybody. They need to have a holistic environmental policy. We do get asked for having an environmental management strategy, environmental management policy, whatever. Once we have that policy that is factorized across all sectors, everybody would know what needs to be done. Then you have to have the codes for green buildings. You have the codes for standards for energy management systems, which we can actually put the renewable energy. We have the standards for water conservation and harvesting. You have the codes for heating and ventilation. Yes.
So I believe this is where Botswana Green Building Council comes in terms of the policy making for sustainability and all that.
Green Building Council of Botswana is still a non-profit organization. It's just an association. Same as other associations international. Even the Green Building Council of South Africa, it's not mandatory according to the Act of Parliament, it's an association. But as opposed to the one in South Africa, GBCSA, they really advise government on issues around sustainability, green building materials and otherwise. But the Green Building Council, Botswana Green Building Council, is one of the 5th green building councils in Africa. Who are members of the World Green Building Council. And they did that in the shortest period of less than 8 years. And it's not a joke. So it actually tells you that a lot of African countries don't have green building councils. You can only do that when the development plan is straightforward, it's clear, it's what you know what you need to do, and you subscribe to a lot of these international conventions that you sign for. Yes. So it's up to the architects, the urban designers, the mechanical electrical engineers to really know, to help shape the standards. There are already standards, ISO standards, around issues around sustainability. We also need to be very close to United Nations climate change intents. You know, we're not a very high emitting country. No, we're not.
No, we're not. Yeah.
Yes, but we also need to find that our construction maybe might be too expensive. How do we deal with alternatives? If you're gonna use bricks in Sironga and you have to take them to the other side of the Mohembo Bridge, transportation and otherwise, and this is a very swampy area, the delta and everything. Can we not find something different that side? Materials that side? Then the ask conscious says, don't we need to train or develop material scientists? And say, can you not make bricks? What kind of quality bricks are we? They read that in that side. Can we not use it and use rammed earth and create some sustainable? These are issues that are there for many years. But the industry needs a voice. The voice must be accepted, must be accommodated, and then it must also find its voice within a spectrum of a policy that could be implemented with the industry being involved. Yes.
No, I hear you and I understand you very well. I'm thinking in my mind. I'm thinking we have we can start this from grassroots level, right?
Mm.
With the architects and designers and how they, when somebody decides, okay, there's a residential building I'm designing, this is what I'm going to be doing. They consider the materials, they consider the methods of construction and all that.
Let's take it to the training of professionals.
Yeah.
That is where it's supposed to start.
Okay.
Not when I want to do what. Remember, when you are now done with your training, you are designing for clients. Client has got their own preferences.
Yes.
You provide a layout and say this is going to be this, what and what. You've got little influence that you can do if the client doesn't want you to do certain things. The reason why renewable energy and green buildings are not prevalent even in the developed world is the resistance from certain particular industries. You know, if you say, okay, fine, let's reduce the construction waste and not use bricks, what are you saying to the brick manufacturing company? What are you saying to the other guys who are producing timber as companies, corporates? Is that you're saying, no, we would rather go with steel or not go with timber. We would rather use these and not that. Some people are already in business for supplying building materials. But as for the aspect of designing, let's go straight to the training. Let's go back to the universities, colleges. Let those ones not struggle to design sustainable buildings after they graduated. Let those ones not struggle to design sustainable neighborhoods. Let those ones not design indoor areas where the heating and cooling systems, whether it's passive or otherwise, are accommodated. Where there is a system of energy management system infused in that.
So now if we are going back to the training, right, to the universities and the colleges, and it goes back to the issue of education and architecture. How advanced do you think our architectural syllabus or curriculum this side is compared to others?
Well, I think the last time I checked, the curriculum of the UB is the only school of architecture in the country. Has not changed, moved much into. I think maybe they would have to move towards issues around sustainability and gearing up the next batch of graduates towards understanding, the nitty-gritties of climate change. It shouldn't be a conference thing. It should be coming straight from the training. And then for those ones who have graduated, fossils like myself, we will need to be re-engineered to now take these issues of climate change, because we have got the propensity of being able to design commercial and mega projects. You get my point?
Yeah.
So if my staff member is very keen on sustainability and has an idea of saying, but how come should we design this thing this way? And because she has been coming from a trained perspective, and I'm coming from the re-engineered perspective, we need to accommodate both of our ideals together. And then we need to make sure that we're taking them further. Yes. So that's the only way of doing it. It's a mindset change thing.
Yeah, okay. So how has your roles evolved across the different positions that you hold? Being an architect, being a project manager, being a chairperson and the board of CESA, former, being also a chairperson in the business Botswana Belt construction sector.
I'll start with business Botswana. I think what I did when I got there was to create an executive committee comprised of industry captains from architects, engineers, interior designers, planners, quantity surveyors and engineers in the built environment space. And also the real estate guys were also part of it, because they were more like the same family. So their presidents actually become my executive committee, so that whatever that we discuss, they will take it back to their members. Yes. So if there is an issue that we need to tackle, that was happening in the last administration that we tried, but we didn't win the way we would have loved to have won. and we're still going to continue
Yeah.
doing that.
Mm.
I would want a situation whereby the urban designers would have a voice and say, let's design Gaborone in this way. And the government says, yes,
Yes.
we will give you the space to do that.
Mm.
This is the only thing that will need to be done.
Mm.
The conversations are ongoing and we're getting received very well.
Yeah.
And then most of our this parliament has got very young people, relatively young people, people you can relate to. Some of them are very highly educated.
Yeah.
They probably understand it, So you walk to a guy who is a lawyer, is an MP, and you say, or he's a minister, for example, and say, look, we would need to have certain policies amendments, which they have to take them to the attorney generals around this specific, certain specificities. And then they get accommodated, and the whole thing changes, and the industry now benefits from that. It's easy. Then to try and implement will be very, very easy.
Yeah.
To try and implement will be very, very easy. At CESA, I was chairman of the infrastructure committee. Yes, we were the head of a few projects, but I will always be insisting, guys, always make sure that there is something to deal with green building and renewables within the scope of work, so that we become an example. But we've only, by the time I left, we only done the silos in Parliament, but they had other projects that were lined up. But that aspect of sustainability, net zero, climate change issues and everything, now it's conversational everywhere. There's no need for anybody to be told what to do and include within an ITT or terms of reference or tender document. Especially with designers. It should be there.
Yeah, it should be there.
It must be there. It should be there. But I would want to see some sort of a revolution in the next 5 years in the construction sector. And I think I would want to see, architects who are very, very versed in design. I want to see interior designers, interior architects giving us delightful interiors. I'd like to see mechanical engineers giving us very, very smart systems of airflow distributions within interior indoor spaces, whether it's industrial, in a clinic, or whatever the case may be. And then for us to do that is that we need to get young people quicker into the industry, into the market, for them to get experience quicker. The time we have delayed too much time.
Yes, we have.
You know what I mean? I mean, you can't be 30 and still not be active in the economy with a degree for whatever that you've studied for. It is a travesty.
Yeah.
Because if you're 30 and I'm 50, like I am right now, I'm already on my way out, and you've got nobody to foster you in terms of skills transfer. I can give you mine, but I have to give you a skills transfer to a certain point whereby at the end of the level, now you understand, and then you innovate on your own going forward, so that somebody who is 22 in the same office can learn from you. Remember, at my level, probably I'll be enjoying, coming to this review if things are done the way the architect's firm direction is all about with regards to sustainability, and then we don't have to design like somebody else. We have got a theme that is within our practices. You see, when you look at people who worked for companies for many years, it's because they believed in the ideal of that particular practice. And apart from the pay being good, and it's because they deliver something that works for them.
Yeah.
If you go to the UK, US, Germany, everywhere, you find that architects, some engineers have worked for the same company for 40 years. It's because they believed in that. It's because they know when I'm here, my ideas get to be manifested other than going somewhere else. So I think this issue of unemployment of graduates, we need to come up with this turnaround strategy, and we've got ideas. If the government really says, okay, let's do this, quickly we will get things done.
There's a new light now with the new administration. I believe there's a new light. There's hope.
Look, there are two folds of getting this thing done. Create a space for private sector to thrive quicker, and then in the space of the built environment, is like the private developers must be given what they want. They want land, they want to create apartments, whatever. Give them. Government should not be the one saying, no, I'll build BHC, I'll build student houses, I'll build these things. Give it to the private sector. Let them use their own money. When you do that, the whole thing sprawls out.
Yeah.
And there are so many opportunities for everyone.
Mm.
You get my point? Artisans, architects, engineers, and everything.
Mm.
So the practices that I would read there with experience, they would have to hire more.
Mm.
If I have five projects,
Mm.
there is no how I am going to handle with my small team.
Mm.
Not one way. So it will force me to have a branch in Francistown, maybe another branch in Maung. And they still have you managing my Maung, another one managing Francistown, and I'm still be here. And then, so all in all, you might find that from a staff capacitance of about 6 that I have, I'm probably going to have even 30. Because the private sector is now thriving. Government is saying, okay, fine, I'm just giving you this, just do that. Concessions in the Delta, in whatever tourism, every sector will benefit. It's the blockages that we are creating that doesn't really help anyone. Okay. Let the guys bring their own money. They will develop that. Had the Century not had an appetite to develop Maung Mall, Maung was still going to be that Maung. But you see, the Cash Bazaar Holdings subsidiary firm, property development company, developed the smaller mall in Maung next to Engine. And as an investor, you see, okay, I've known about Maung. There's a lot of flies coming in there, and what about we do these things? The private sector has to risk their own money for that, because had they not doing that, we're still going to remain with Maung being like a big village. But around the mall of Maung, there's a propensity and the appetite for residentials, for golf clubs, for whatever. It can sprawl beyond that. It's because now you have developed an amenity that creates another supply value for other investors to come in.
Take like a collaboration between the private sector and the government.
Yes. Tawana Land Board, if someone says, I need 12 hectares to develop this international school, give them. Don't waste time. Don't say, no, you are still in the queue. A developer once he comes and say, I'm going to develop a school which is 100 million pula, the amount of jobs and supply value chain in that, you have to call him and say, Mister, how far are you? We need to come and sign this thing. You don't have to say, no, you are in the queue. People will worry because they've been waiting for land for 10 years. This one is commercial. It turns people's life around. It creates jobs. It creates a lot of propensity for everything. Even because now we've got this new guidelines of saying the small vendors must be accommodated in retail malls. There's the retailers now, they're coming from, even if they have been financed by a social program like Shema, now you can actually now move into a mall. You're buying small assets. You don't want to go into a orange shop within and then buy airtime. Just buy it outside and then you go. So that mindset change.
It's what we need. So that means that now we have to now relook into the building, the Botswana Buildings Act that we have. Try maybe loosen up some rules or laws that were.
Let me get, before you go, let me get you to the SEZA, Special Economic Zones. SEZ. SEZA is an authority. They've got 9 sites. Developed one, not fully, which is the Pandamatenga one. They've got a potential for others. You see, the conversation I'm telling these guys is like, you've got very high potential areas. Give that to the private sector to risk their money. They'll do. They'll come.
They will. Yeah.
If we get things right, it is my hope. If we get things right, and then the SEZ, there's appetite in all these 9 sites. Botswana can be a construction site in the next 2 years. And everybody, my friend, will be having a job.
Yeah.
Everybody.
So how?
I'm not talking about construction and built environment professionals. Even the supply value chain, the one that does the bricks, the capstones, the pipes, the roads, everybody would have, even the aggregates, the concrete, everybody would have a space to run. That what will means then the private sector grows, employment grows, GDP grows, livelihoods are changed. within 2 years.
So it's a case of just removing the red tapes around.
Look, we will. I think this is the ideals that we're going to have to, everybody in their respective sector where they are. And I'll advise the government and say, look, you are grappling with unemployment. Perhaps you got voted because young people were getting frustrated and idle. What is the turnaround? We say no, but let's liberalize the economy. Once you liberalize the economy, every sector benefits. Every sector benefits.
Your statements on Facebook where you said construction industry with regards to mega public project is rotten to the core. Brace yourselves, we are about to change that. Is that what you meant?
You know, we have been seeing something that works against the grains of construction industry ethics for many years. But the industry was helpless. The industry was helpless. But we had to morph ourselves into this system that was imperfect, that was wrong. But we ran with it. But it was causing more pain elsewhere. And nothing was done. There was no government interventions. There was no government political willingness. It was not perfect. But we ran with it. On the political sphere, maybe it was it was okay, fine. We're building more roads, we're getting water projects. We are putting up electrical grids, Kobo Northwest, Kobo Maunga, Sanishaka, because electricity is key. But the undertaking was not the way it should have been done. It went against all the ethos that you can think of. Even the awarding of contracts was not done the way we would have loved to. Well, it was my frustration of what I've shared in social media, but it shouldn't be the case. I've got better ways to address these things, but I just wanted you to hear. You see, sometimes in terms of information dissemination, if we are going to go and talk things in the boardrooms all the time, then ordinary Botswana would have missed and say, would have not known that certain things were not done the right way would have been done. Yes. So it is one of those things like, let's self-correct as an industry, not government correcting us. Let's self-correct as an industry. Let's remove all these innuendos of malpractice, corrupt practices, fronting, whatever. We know what we need to do. So right now we're working with PPRA as Business Botswana construction and engineering sectors. We are trying to look at the Act of PPRA Act of 2022 and looking at the gappings. So sometimes the blockages come from these acts that we do. Yes. And they create an impediment for Botswana to thrive. So this is where we say, remove this one. The tone of this one is not the right one. This one is too weak. Let's strengthen it this way. All this type of thing. So, PPRA, because it works with the private sector, must not subscribe to a political will. It was deal with enhancing the private sector. That goes with the same as the Citizen Economic Empowerment, the Citizen Inclusion Act. We had so many reservations as the business was on about it, but they went ahead with it anyway. Yeah. That is one of them that is actually making Botswana not thrive. That is the procurement, public procurement, and the Citizen Inclusion Act. I think we will need to look into them and also put them into construction. And saying, do we necessarily need to have a foreign contractor doing a school, a clinic? These are our projects, man. This is our project. This is Botswana. We've been doing these things before there was foreign dominance in the construction in the 80s. There were a lot of companies that have fallen out of the sphere because we decided, no, Botswana is not good enough. But Botswana is good enough to become a pilot, actually Makua and everybody else flying them to Kasane and Maung, but it's not good enough to construct a house.
That's what I was about to ask you about it. How come we have a lot of our construction projects done by foreign people, foreign architects designing our buildings? They define our architecture themselves.
Design is different. If you haven't done a mall, it will be difficult for you to design a mall. There are people who are designing malls every day. If you haven't designed a hospital, it's not easy to walk into a hospital. But you also need to create a technical partnership with joint venture with someone who has done something similar, and you benefit.
Yeah.
We are not going to discourage that. From a design perspective, there are people who are experts. We are still going to have to come until to a level whereby we are self-sustainable and we have designed, and our architectural output becomes an ecotourism. We're not there yet. You take Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Bahrain, Qatar. Look at the architecture of these areas. All 90% of them are designed by foreign companies. These guys have got oil money. They want to buy the best brain. We need to come to that level as well. But the best brain in our developing country must also work with the local brain.
Yes.
So that I can give you a classroom. You can design a classroom. There's no innovation there. But if we are going to innovate a classroom differently, and somebody has done it before, then let me work with them.
We need to collaborate with
Our construction sector on the contractor side hasn't grown. It hasn't grown for 20 years. And like I said, we had let people think it was normal. It was fine. The country was developing. It was wrong. 20 years ago, I was not here. So is a lot of people. We're not here. We came back. The system was still the same. Nobody has ever said, Kanti, when am I going to see Botswana in construction site and go doing 1 billion pula worth of a project? Nobody asked that question. How do you have a political system that doesn't ask this kind of questions? In South Africa, you are not allowed to import cement because they've got cement manufacturing plant, Bonobo PPC. So they made it deliberate. You buy South Africa first. In the US, you have to buy United American products first in construction before you can say, this one we don't have them. They import steel from China as well, of course, like anybody else. But whatever is local must be local. We spent so many years buying bricks from Coral Brick in South Africa, from Limpopo, that side, to do all these police houses, study phase brick, and all sorts of things. But nobody ever said, hang on a minute, because we've got BDC here, can you find these Botswana investors 100 million to create this phase brick? Then we were going to say, oh no, Lorato is risky. She cannot handle 100 million. Type of thing. Now we are putting our personal issues onto something. I'm not to know, but Mr. James here from South Africa can handle 100 million, but he's 10 years younger than you are, because he's maybe with a different skin. But then we trust him with 100 million more than you. But how long is he going to be here? How long are we supposed to be saying he should do that and employ? Why can't you not employ?
And we are not even.
We're going to change that. That is the reform that we're going to do next.
So it's exciting, and I'm excited about what's coming. So how do we now, inject more people into such positions where we'll be able to, say, for example, the Ministry of Trade is going wherever it's going to, look for investors for the construction and whatnot. How do we inject more of our young people into that?
Trade missions. Trade missions is something that we failed to do in a lot of time to bring investors. Trade missions is not supposed to be government going there and looking for investors for us. It's a business undertaking. It's a private sector thing. The government is supposed to facilitate. Here is a young person, yourself, under 35, has got this idea, has seen a partner, or is looking for a partner for this idea. You are supposed to be the one who's getting to the next flight to wherever we're going. Here is this big company who wants to expand Botswana. You are the next one getting to the flight. Not this thing of, I'm going to go to this, I'm got BITC and civil servants.
It doesn't work.
We just need the Ministry of Trade on a trade mission.
Mm.
Then we go there as Team Botswana.
Mm.
And then we sign what we sign. We come in here, they come in here, they set up. You are partners, that goes on.
Okay.
So the only thing that is left for unemployed is that to become more innovative. Drive so many ideas. Just work with so many ideas. So many ideas. Work with so many ideas.
Let's talk about redevelopment or refurbishment of buildings, right? Don't ask me where. So you talk about the redevelopment of the Botswana National Stadium, right? And then recently the Botswana National Museum has been redeveloped or refurbished in a way. What do you think?
I think our national stadium has been done a disservice. It's almost 38 years old. We have seen a lot of stadia around the world getting facelifts. Wembley Stadium was one of them in 2001. FNB Stadium across the border here in South Africa was one of them for the 2010 FIFA World Cup. So is a lot of others. And even today, the new camp stadium for Barcelona FC is getting refurbished and they're putting a new roof and all sorts of things. Some of these things, they really need a political direction around refurbishments, beautifying, urban regeneration, and others. It should not be said, I mean, in my view, the Francistown and the National Stadium should have been re-roofed or roofed holistically, and all these infills in those areas maybe 10, 15 years ago. But if you don't have a political willingness to do certain projects, or if it's not a priority, we'll still be stuck with all these stadiums that look like the rest of Africa type of thing. No offense. But we're talking about a country which is the very highest GDP in the world, in an African perspective. In one of the highest, we're talking about a rich country that cannot plan for itself. It's a tragedy.
It's a shame.
It's a shame. It's a shame, really. You know, the GDP of Botswana is higher than that of Kenya. Kenya has got 42 million. We've only got, at the time, we've got 2.1 million people. Why can't we just take 200 million and develop the stadium? That's nothing. It's almost $2 million at a time, or $20 million at a time. Why can't we be steadfast in doing certain things? So we need to have an intentional direction in infrastructure development, or even urban design, or even master planning, urban planning, all these type of things. You can do master plans and still not develop. You can do master plans and offer them to the private sector. That will say, okay, fine. When you're coming from the CBD, you can cross over. You don't necessarily need to go left east. Just cross over until you get to the Svalana headquarters. You're decongesting. Maybe that area here can become a small mini mall, because, like we're saying, obsession with malls. It could be something else. So it's one of those things that you have to have an urban design, urban master plan, sort of framework that says we're going to do rejuvenations of areas. Lobatse is dead. If Lobatse is not dead, it needs a holistic approach for urban regeneration. People is not dead. You cannot say a town is tied to a mine. Lobatse is tied to BMC. That's an awkward thinking. Regenerate, create new things. What if Lobatse has the biggest golf course in the world that you can have all these internationals coming through? And then you've got shuttles that will take them from Sakama Airport, or you can build an airport behind, a small airstrip. Then every year there's a golf tournament in Botswana in Lobatse. Just that means, what does BMC has to do with urban generation? So we need to be intentional about these things. We need to have conversations. We need to have a government that listens. And then when it listens, be able to implement. We can't keep on holding conferences all the time. We're talking about this, we're talking about that for so many years. the engineering conference, they're talking about the same thing, the solutions. Nothing is taken over by government. No, we can't. We need to have a conference that have solutions that can have something that could be implemented. To say, well, we talked about this, but this is happening. Yes.
Okay. So what do you think as the role of local communities and stakeholders in decisions about redevelopment of aging infrastructure?
The community benefits employment wise, but if the community wants to create investment type of bodies to benefit in that, maybe yes. But at the end of the day, there should be a consultative forum of what we need to do with the community. They shouldn't get short. And I'll give you an example of a certain preamble that happens in the UK.
Yeah.
They'll create all these twisting skyscrapers in Liverpool, Leeds, Manchester, London, and everything. You know what they do from there? You have to put it in council for about a month so that they can get public views. If 90 people say, this is very ugly, you can't continue with it.
Okay.
Because I think that is the concept.
Yeah.
So you're trying to get public views. But as a developer, say, okay, fine, I've got 200 million pounds to develop this. But the public doesn't like it, or they say, no, your glazing is facing my area.
It's not.
You're going to change that because it's coming from the people who are going to be affected by this infrastructure in the middle of their neighborhoods, in the middle of where they live. Here we don't do that. Just put it there. Whether you like it or not, that's up to you. But we need to change that. I think I like that approach.
Yeah.
But we need to also get the community involved in all these developments to say we need to have, even including encouraging local investors in communities to do that. We should do that. Community stakeholder engagement is very, very key.
Yes.
It's not only the whole spectrum of the community, whether it's the investor community, whether it's the residential community, whatever communities that you're talking about. Every constituent part of where you're going to develop must be consulted, and you need to understand their views. Yes.
So what do you think are some of the common misconceptions about the feasibility of reusing or developing other infrastructure or buildings? Take, for example, that building in Memo, the Orapa House building.
Oh,
yeah. So what do you think are some of the misconceptions about the feasibility of,
The Orapa House gives us to maybe it could become our biggest platform to start knowing how to do retrofitting. It was headquarters for the diamond sorting. But in terms of the spatial layout and design, I'm not privy. I've never been inside because it was a high security area at the time. But we need to now talk about the issues of sustainability, the retrofitting, and then unfortunately we're going the standards and the guidelines of what needs to be done in terms of the airflow distribution, renewables, and the smartness of whatnot. Because of the issues of COVID, touching everywhere, every surface is not going to work for us. So we need to also have there are so many building stocks, even in ministry headquarters. I had met some gentlemen from the vice president of ASHRAI, is the American Systems of Health and Renewable Energy. I think that's what it's called. They have developed a guideline for retrofitting. This is what we would want to borrow from them to understand how best we can implement this thing. See, collaboration is very important working with international, with people who have done something similar. You don't have to invent anything, so that you get into a building, it's cooled automatically. And then when people leave the buildings, it understands that the heating is now lower down. It can shut some areas. Even the light. So we need to use certain building stock as examples of progression.
So are there any financial incentives that exist for developers to consider adaptive reuse rather than building new buildings altogether?
There's green financing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's now available from the banks.
Mm-hmm.
Stock exchange companies are also, capital markets are also trying to get money from. There's a green building bond in the United Nations climate change.
Mm-hmm.
There is that fund,
Mm-hmm.
green finance, green bonds.
Mm.
They are already available. Countries in the UAE, United Arab Emirates, are benefiting heavily because they've taken this issue of sustainability because of the energy consumption of them is very, very, very high. Very, very, very high because of the oil production in the Gulf. So they have to do something.
Okay.
So they're benefiting from that. Yes, green bonds are here, but we will need to do more.
Now going to the end of our podcast, right? Or our interview. What is your advice, or what advice would you give to young architects, project managers, contractors? Are you a painter? Are you a floor tiler? What advice would you give to those aspiring in those fields? What advice would you give them?
One thing I've realized with our graduates is that they don't read and research. They aim to get a certification and get out of training. We find that not only in architecture, maybe in engineering, they interview people, and sometimes you wonder what has been happening in the training institutions. Young people must start now to research, to read, to subscribe to online magazines, to watch your podcasts, to understand the reality in the world. You're not going to get the reality of the world if you ignore everything, information outside.
Yeah.
You get, if you are an aspiring to be an entrepreneur, get mentored by someone who's already doing something that you aspire to do. Mentorship shouldn't come at a cost. You want to open up a firm? Come to me. I'll give you, what needs to be done, and you need to do it right. At no cost. So why should you? I have to be your mentor. Why should mentors pay? So there's a mentorship state. Those who are still in school must be able to read, subscribe, and whatever.
Research. Yeah.
Internship is also one of the biggest things. Unfortunately, we haven't done a lot of internship because companies were not getting a lot of opportunities. But internship must come as a responsibility of the industry and the training institutions. So everybody who has to go for internship must find a space where they are going to get internship. And there should be a framework for internship. For the first year, second year, third year, and fourth year. So whatever for example, a first year student who is going to internship, what is that they were looking for? A second year, a third year, a fourth year who's about to exit university. What kind of tailor-made internship program can we create for them? That's where the registrars come into play, the regulators. ERC, ERB, QSFC.
Yeah.
They need to help the industry to create an internship program. And that internship program must also be reflective in the curriculum development at these institutions. These students are just pawns. They can't go out and look for internship themselves. The training institutions, the regulators, the industry at large, and government must create this harmonized unit to say, this is a batch coming out. We're not first year of Iran. So you find that on the third year, for example, I'm talking about architecture now.
Yeah.
The 8 weeks, take him on site for 8 weeks. On the fourth year, urban design, let him understand what is happening in urban design in terms of urbanity and whatever, and green buildings and what have you, standards and what not. The fifth year, what we want from him. So there should be all those expectations. So that's when these guys graduate, they are exactly what the industry wants, because we have been building and molding them together as a unit between all the stakeholders. They didn't mold balloons. Somebody can get a 2-1, first class, whatever they are,
and still struggle to get mentored in the office because they haven't gone through a system of internship.
Yes.
So going forward is that as an industry, the internship must be designed for everyone. Whether you are doing real estate, whether you are doing quantity surveying, whether you're doing urban design, we have to design the internship. Kids should not ask for internship, they must be absorbed.
Yeah.
My company should say, I will take 10, I'll take 5. This so that and in that cycle, everybody else who had gone, this whole batch of people going for internship have been absorbed. And there's a monitoring and evaluation system of all this internship that has been done.
By both the regulatory bodies and the...
Everybody's involved. So I shouldn't put a kid in my office and then I just go to my project in Kasane and leave him. No.
Yeah.
If I'm leaving, then my architect who's head of design or whatever they will be has to be the one mentoring this kid. I need to know when I sign for that report and then I do an inquisition with on a sort of an interview. It's something that they understand.
Yeah.
It's not something that they are not getting fully acquainted with.
Yeah, I think that's also the gap that we have to close as architectural engineering firms within
the whole built
country.
environment. The whole built
Yeah.
environment. The whole built environment. And also the collaboration between architects, engineers, quantity surveyors, and urban designers, urban planners. The planners are still new into this practice thing. Their role really in terms of this project cycle is not yet defined. I hope they could get defined as we go. They've never really been trained as practitioners, the same way as architects are, because they don't really have a regulatory body. No, they don't. They just have a certificate that says you can go and practice. The reason why the government decided to do that was because they're getting too many and they will never get in place anywhere else in the government system. So what would their planner do now? Then they decided to say, okay, fine, they will do these site plans and then if they do more training to become urban designers or project managers, they will become an asset for themselves to do. But for now, yes, perhaps we would sit down with them and say, so what role would you play? Do you get to be engaged at the same time as an architect and an interior designer on a project cycle before we give the drawings to the interior design, to the structural engineers and the mechanical and electrical engineers, all those type of things. So that's harmonization working relationship must be defined.
Yes.
So for now, we're still not really defining these things, but it needs to be defined.
Yes. Everybody is working on that. Oh, architect is there, interior designer is there.
Yeah, I mean, I shouldn't be excited working designing houses at my age. This is supposed to be young people's things.
Yeah.
I've done this thing so many times. It's not even excitement for me. But excitement for me would be to design a mine shaft, type of thing, and maybe a house that goes because it's challenging. It's what everybody's in. But just multi-res, come on.
One last question before we go. What legacy do you hope to leave in Botswana's architectural and infrastructure landscape?
I need to see. I think it will take a bit of time. Maybe before I'm 70 years old, the next 20 years, I would want to see the whole country changed into a private sector-led economy. It could be done. It will take a lot of time.
Yeah.
A lot of regulatory frameworks, constitutional amendments, and what have you. But we can get there.
Yeah.
The testament of the smooth transition from one government to another told us that we are people who work on harmony. So if you harmonize all our policies, if you harmonize and liberalize the economy, we will get there quicker than it should be. The appetite for investors in Botswana must be one of those things that we are going to drive. I think the government is going to do that quicker. And then we need to be honest about ourselves. We've got a very thriving democracy. We've got very vibrant young people who can be innovative given the opportunity. Come and let's work with them. So my legacy, and I'm going to continue working with the built environment, even if I'm outside as chairman, outside as a board member.
That's important.
And even on the side, is to see that by the time someone graduates and they're 35, they are seasoned professionals in their own right, regardless of whichever profession they're working in. So that once we enjoy our retirement, the country is in good hands from all sectors of the economy.
Yeah.
But in the built environment, I would want to see that the pocket of land parcels that government is having, give it to the private sector to develop very wonderful urbanisms, great neighborhoods. And the architecture also must change, must be adaptive.
Yeah, it must be adaptive.
To the world. You know, who would have thought Dubai would flood? It flooded this year. You know, of course they've got it flooded, and actually within a week or two,
They got strategies.
The whole place was dry because they have a very good drainage system. It's maybe because they have anticipated that in designs. Maybe not even a single building was collapsed.
Yeah,
it tells you that the innovators had thought this thing prior to
forward.
This. They sampled this
Yeah.
place and say, what if we have the 2005 tsunami that happened in Japan that flooded the whole areas? Unfortunately, it goes to what we will talk about infrastructure development. The east of Africa was washed out. Ethiopia, Somalia, Eritrea, and everything, because tsunami also arrived that area. 35,000 people lost their life, unfortunately. But in Japan, yes, they really did, but the cities stood, not that much damaged. So that is when I'm saying, if Dubai could have water flooding dissipating within a week or two, then their sewage systems were great, their stormwater drainage systems were great, but they had planned for these things. They've also planned for their designs to say, what if we have a tornado? This is great winds. What will happen to all those tall buildings? They have thought these things because they sit down and innovate and think about these things. They sample buildings, they do models, they blow the wind with a fan and then see, and then they do all the simulations and whatever. It's not like firms don't do that. If you go to very serious engineering firms, they will always tell you, whether they simulate about the plane carrying 1,000 people, 2,000 people. Obviously, they will have to limit to, I think the A380 takes about 800. But the other guys who were in Bashias wanted to plane that can carry about 5,000 people. But it's impossible because of the load, of whatever the gravity is. But they do these things very simple. So the only thing that we would want to see is let's innovate.
Yeah.
Let's get, people should get smarter now. There's no dumb person in this industry. Let's get smarter.
Yeah.
If you focus on something that you like, maybe focus onto it. If you want to work with the type of architecture that really is a resemblance of vernacular or works for the tourism industry as your basis for your concentration, do that. If you like hospitals and want to design hospitals and stadium, do that. If you like to design commercials, malls and everything, do that. So the legacies are there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have said, yes, there are buildings that I want to see around town, the houses that I've done in Pakalani and Skua and everything, but this is me. But this is me, but some of them are hidden. But the guys who've done airport junction have said, this is me, because we are there to see it.
Yeah.
But then there should be a level whereby Botswana should now start to consume architecture and interior design.
Joining us today, sir. I really enjoyed the conversation and hope our audience enjoys it too.